light. Light is very important to us. With cave people, light meant security. Fire meant that you could scare away the animals. You could see in the dark. You could see what was happening. Light shows us what is before us. It gives us clarity. When we're walking in a forest or somewhere dark, light like this helps us to see where we're walking. It helps us to see more clearly. It reveals what is really there. In Epiphany, that's my technical director. We are in the last Sunday of Epiphany, the season of light. We talk about the star. And we in the beginning of Epiphany, right after Christmas, we started with the Magi, following the star to the manger, to baby Jesus. And then we had Jesus' baptism. That's probably a picture of that right there. But Jesus' baptism, where the sky parted and God said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." As we travel through Epiphany. Good morning.
Oh no. Sorry.
You haven't missed any. I was just as we travel through Epiphany, Jesus' nature is slowly revealed to us. We see him healing. We see him performing miracles. Slowly but slowly we see, who is this man? Who is this man who can bring people back from the dead? Who is this man who heals lepers? Who is this man who can turn water into wine and a few fish into many? We still don't quite know, but we see it and we think, wow, this is someone very special. And people were guessing. Maybe he was John the Baptist who came back from the dead. And maybe it was Moses or Elijah again. People were saying they just didn't know. So here we have the gospel today, the transfiguration. Jesus asked Peter and James and John to come up to the mountaintop with him. Now this harkens back to other mountaintop experiences with Moses and Elijah. And when they're at the top of the mountain, a bright light appears, and Jesus is transfigured into a bright light. His robes are white, dazzling white, and his face is white, shining white. And with him appear Moses and Elijah, and he starts talking to them. The disciples just must have thought they were losing their minds. Wouldn't you have wondered if you were standing there watching this? So Peter, overcome with all of this, says, "Lord, we need to build 3 huts to commemorate this place. Let's build a monument to it so we can come and worship the monument." But as Peter is saying this, he's interrupted by a bright cloud and God's voice saying, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Listen to him. Listen to him. It's interesting that God chose those words, isn't it? God could have said anything. He could have said, "Make him your king." He could have said, "Crown him, worship at his feet." But what did God say? God said, "Listen to him." So in this mountaintop experience, Jesus is revealed as the Son of God. And God reveals his message to us, to the world. listen to what my son is saying. This is what I want you to do. Now, as they come down from the mountain, Jesus tells them, don't tell anyone this. Because after all, weren't the disciples still in the dark? I mean, after this, Peter denies Christ 3 times. They abandoned him at the crucifixion. I mean, they really don't know who he is. And then after he dies, they think, this is it, it's over, despite the fact that Jesus tried to tell them over and over. And it wasn't until he was resurrected that they realized, oh, this is what he said was going to happen. So Jesus, as he walks down the mountain, what we don't read in today's gospel is that he is immediately encountered by a boy who was inhabited by a demon that just makes him shriek and writhe and fall over the place. So Jesus, from this mountaintop experience where God is revealed, comes back to the world, enters the world, our reality, and heals this boy. Jesus is showing us, by his example, that yes, we have mountaintop experiences where God is revealed to us. I hope often in these services with our church and together as a community. But what are we to do with our knowledge of God's light and love? We are to take it down from the mountain and out into the world. We are to share our light and love with everyone. Everyone is a child of God, and everyone needs to learn about God's love and light. There's another thing in this story that is really, really touching to me. As the disciples are falling over in awe, they just don't know what to do, Jesus reaches over and touches them. He touches them. And they look up. And he is himself again. And that he's just a regular old Jesus. But he says, do not be afraid. I will be with you. Jesus is telling us that in the mountaintop experiences and when we take out God's love into the world, he is with us every step of the way. We are to listen to Jesus from our mountaintop experiences and take it out into the world. Martin Luther King had a similar mountaintop experience. He gave a famous speech right before he was killed. And some people think he had a premonition that he was going to be killed when he gave the speech. This is part of it. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter to me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Martin Luther King had a mountaintop experience where God was revealed to him. But he didn't stay there, did he? He came down into the world and helped work against institutional and implicit racism in our society. This is the last Sunday of Black History Month. Some people may wonder, why do we need a Black History Month? We don't have White History Month. I thought about that too. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, in reality, for 99% of my life, I had a White History Month every month. And really, when I thought about what I had learned in school, I really didn't learn much about Black history, African American history, which is really our history. I mean, we wouldn't say the German history in the United States. We wouldn't say the English history of the United States. We'd say that's part of American history. So to call it African American history is really just saying it's part of our history. But in history class, I didn't learn about these people. Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, Thurgood Marshall, the one who argued the Brown versus Board of Education case in 1954 and later became the first African-American Supreme Court Justice, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King, or John H. Murphy Jr. Now, you all may not know who John H. Murphy Jr. is. I didn't know until I read the Sun paper this week. John H. Murphy Jr. was a slave born in 1840. He fought in the Civil War on the side of the Union Army. And when he got out of the war, he was totally penniless. Then he met a young woman and fell in love, and her father was a farmer. So they got married, and he started working as a janitor and other jobs to make ends meet. And then he bought a Sunday paper. And then he bought the Afro-American newspaper. He built up the African-American newspaper to become a major, so that it became the major African-American newspaper in the United States. And he did this from being a slave. Now, did any of us ever hear about this before? This is our history. Racism is a sin against God. Racism is an affront. We are not listening to what we heard on the mountaintop if we condone racism or implicitly allow it. If we hear our friends saying racist things or telling a racist joke or making a racist comment, what are we doing if we don't challenge them on it? Are we spreading God's light and love in this world? Or are we just sort of shying away? Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but I never noticed that Jesus shied away from anything. So we have an obligation, an affirmative obligation to address this in the world, whether it's overt or implicit. I mean, I saw it when I was in Cuba, and I challenged it. We have an obligation as God's children to spread God's light and love so that every one of God's children is treated with equal dignity and respect. I would like you to turn to the Book of Common Prayer to page 304. It's the red book, in case anybody.
This one.
The red book. You all have it? You see on there, when we are baptized, or anyone we know is baptized, we make promises to God. We are become God's children and we make promises. And what are these promises? If you look at the last three promises, and as I say it, I want you to respond, I will, with God's help. Will you proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ?
I will, with God's help.
Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself?
I will, with God's help.
Will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being?
I will, with God's help.
Amen.